came through those doors and we were like, I don't know if this, because we were like, remember, it wasn't the right bedrooms, it wasn't the right whatever. And Anna's just standing over there and she's just kind of like staring off this. And she's just like, this is it. Because of the horizon, the gardens, and we call it now like vista living, where if you can find your vista in life. Like for a while we thought it was the beach and we thought it was going to be that. But when we got out here and we saw the mountains, and if there's somewhere that can ground you every day in magnitude, where you're like, I am so small, yet everything is so large and expansive in life. It's just a great way to wake up every day. And when we're like, man, I got to build businesses with more peace or not as much of this, you have to almost engineer those moments, because you're like, when I'm in it, I got to be in it, but then I got to be able to pull out and be like, yeah, mountains. I'm very small in the scope of the world of this. And then like the gardens allowed us to just be like, again, what grounds you? That, because you're like, I have to give back and care for this, for it to produce beauty. But like, we got to work at this. And that just puts you into another place every day where you're like, to have the vista that you want in life, we also have to work and earn for it, not just be able to like have it given to us, if you will. So as you're thinking about where is that in my life, I'd be like, what is the horizon that you need? Is it the mountains? Is it the ocean? Is it the what? And then what do you also need on a daily basis that you can ground you to remind you, I still got to walk around and clip a hedge. We call it that, walking around and clip a hedge, but it might be something else for you, but you get the metaphor, that really just brings peace into life. And that is, whoever's asking, like, what are one of the ways that you can slow down? You got to find your peace in your everyday. Make sense? This is our just little garden area where Anna's gonna have her little garden.
Tomatoes are in bloom, people.
The funny thing, this area, we used to call it like the Congo.
Oh yeah.
Because we didn't not even know it was a trail. Like the first time Rock came here, this was just bushes of crap that you couldn't even, like, you didn't even know what was going on. That we were then finally like, you know what, let's get that area cleared out. We're ready finally for like this area. And we're like, yo, there's a switchback trail. Look at this. And we're like, this is gonna be the perfect place to plant, where we're like, we can extend the vineyard, because over on the Syrah side is where we started. This we literally just got to now, 3 years in, that a lot of times you gotta think about your dreams and you gotta be like, stages and phases, people. Stages and phases.
Grow into it,
and whatnot.
right?
But like, this was just like, also we're like, yo, the entire property has a walk around it now, that it still needs a couple completion things, but it goes back to, we were talking about, if you can engineer the moment, if you can engineer a walk in your everyday, that is then in the nature that you love, walking along the beach, walking in the mountains, walking on a vineyard. For us, everything is vineyard wine kind of associated, but if you can do that, you're just adding another level of how you can reimagine home. And as compared to the furniture I got, not that that ain't great, you're like, these things add more depth and fabric to it, so.
To your lifestyle. And I know that for so many of you, you're into energy work. They say that nature provides the most balanced frequency of energy. It doesn't take it from you, it doesn't push it on you, it allows it to just be. So my favorite thing was always going for hikes. I would be in Santa Monica or in Malibu, and I was always like, that's where I have to go, because if I don't get that in my life, I don't get that time to release. I don't get that time to just be in nature. So this has become that nature walk that I kind of miss from, you know, being close to all those hikes. And now we kind of get to give that as a gift to every visitor that comes here.
So with the wine business, we're literally brand new to learning about, but like, we were at a retreat with just one of my highest end clients, and he had all of us around him, and we had one thing about like, what is your next 10, 15, 20 years of legacy look like? And in the beginning, the first rounds of doing everything, you're all thinking better, but everything we were doing was better, same. I've seen it. It's better, but it's the same. I've seen it. That's what Brendan's doing. That's what this guy's doing. It was always better, the same. And even here, when we were like, oh, we're going to do this kind of wine here and that, and it was just kind of like what the people were telling us around us. But when Alessandro, who you guys hopefully will meet tonight, when he was just like, listen, for what you're trying to do with the fact that you want a private select wine, he's just like, cab sauv sells, so he's just like, good decision. But he's just like, what no one's doing out here is bringing Italian cab sauv in. So we're like, ooh, better, different. So when you're thinking about business or brand decisions, you got to have your eye out there for how do I want to do this that's better but not same, better but different. So that becomes one of your distinction markers out there. And then right now with so many businesses all looking the same, distinction is the way through. How do I stand out of the masses? How do I stand out in the different things?
Catch one of these bad boys. And just you know, take a little taste. Like, they're ready, but they're gonna be small because it's a fairly young tree. Does anybody else want to taste?
In Sicily, I have all the memories and moments of like running around with my cousins, and our parents would just let us go. Remember those days? Just let you go. And we'd be gone for hours in the fig trees and in the orchards. And like I can have visions of I'm in a tree like hitting my sisters with figs and things like that. And it was just those memories that we were like, what if we can give that to Luca? Because those kind of traditions of family are often being left behind for like iPads and this and that and the shows that we're like, yo, we got to back to grounding. I don't want him, like when my father came from Sicily, you know, a lot of people were changing their names because just the prejudice that was going on at, you know, WAPs, basically. And my dad made a very specific point about we don't change our name. You remember that you are Sicilian before you were American. You will be Italian American. Now my son will be American Italian, but I'm like, if we don't intentionally implant the Italian in him and those things, it'll just get washed out over time. So we're just thinking about in home, how do we engineer the things that we're like, I grew up with these memories and I remember the fig trees and I remember this and that. So let's give that to Luca. Now he's old enough to come out here and wander on his own. Anna's like, why did we get a dog? Because I'm like, one, there's rattlers out here. Lady will eventually be his guide. But
I will never agree to the fact that it was a good idea to get a dog, but maybe one day it will show itself as to be valuable.
But just a couple days ago, he's out here by himself, and he's got Lady with him, and he comes inside and he's like, Dad, come. Apple ready. And I'm like, this is what I was waiting for. Just that moment. He's got his little hand. Hopefully you guys will meet him a little. Dad, apple ready. So cute.
He already knows the lesson of the vines. No pick, he tells my sister Autumn. No pick. When it's red, it's ready. Because he's been listening to us constantly. No, don't pick it yet. But also, Vito and I, the way that we're planting our dream life is to think about the things that also bring us that nostalgia. Have you guys thought about what makes you feel nostalgic in a while? You know?
The traditions,
and is there
the memories.
A way to bring it back into your life and give it to your children as well? I grew up on a dairy farm because my grandparents, they had 500 dairy cows and chickens and horses and pigs. And I remember just getting eggs from the chicken coop and making fresh eggs with my grandma and picking corn and husking barrels after barrels and then canning. And it brings me back to that appreciation of farming. And I really wanted to be able to give that to Luca when we decided to move out where there was property. That was in the back of my mind of wow, he can actually have an appreciation for farming and understanding where these things come from and having fresh fruits and vegetables, right? And
that he'll have to take care of. Mm-hmm. Because that was a lesson that I didn't appreciate when I was younger, where I'm joking, my dad would send us out in the fields
Go pick.
for 8 hours a day, nonetheless. But that work ethic, what I loved about Temecula, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the 5 freedoms when we teach a thing called about location freedom, but people look at it most of the time just like, where do I want to live type thing. I'm like, where's the culture and the mindset of the people that you also want to live? Because I wanted to be able to raise Luca around other farmers, because when we met all these people here, if there's a bad season, right now, this isn't good because the heat this early is frying grapes. So all the vineyard owners are literally like, this is gonna be a stress year. And they're all right into it, but they don't have disposable dreams. They're like, I can't just be like, yo, this online business didn't work, I'm out. They're like, yo, bitches, like we planted this stuff. We have to freaking work this come what may. We have to take the best of it. That work ethic is also part of the lesson that you're thinking about in how you raise children, how we talk to each other, what we decide to value in life. And that's part of the reason why we're just like, he has to learn to grow around and know what to clip, what not, because we have to care for the things that we've created, not just have them.
That's good.
Yeah, we have to know how to care for the things we've created, not just have them. This is the 2 acres of Syrahs right now.
This
is 3 years in. So this bad boy, you can kind of already start seeing the clusters coming in right inside here. A little gold.
This used to be 95 citrus lemon trees. This whole lot. And you know, it was funny because the moment that we discussed, oh, should we leave the lemon trees or should we clear it out and plant vines?
It was approximately a 5-second discussion because I'm like, I didn't move out here to live on a lemon farm. Number 2, and then I asked, what was the
it was the gardener that we had.
The gardener, and I'm like, yo, so what are lemons like going for in the market? Because I like, you know, entrepreneur I'm right into, can I do something with this?
Well, it takes a lot of water. It's a big
he's
investment.
Just like, oh, lemons, if we did this whole thing, maybe $1,600 for the whole thing. I'm like, rip it out!
You can't even cover water expense.
You can't even cover a water expense with that. When we decided to come here, we're like, okay, goodbye lemon trees, we're going vineyard. We came out here to live on a vineyard, but I didn't know anything about the wine business.
No.
And I was like starting to find out, and they're kind of like the people like, oh, well, you grow the grapes and you sell them to the local vineyards because they'll take it because they don't have to go invest in land, so they'll buy it from you wholesale. And I was just like, what's that look like on paper? And they're like, I mean, depending on, he's just like, you might get 9,000-10,000 for what you got depending on tonnage. And I'm like, man, I'm like, that's the status quo arrangement. That's what everybody back to better, same. I was just like, oh, no. We got to figure out better, different. So we just started working our way through relationships to figure out how to get to the private label person that knows the thing that can allow you to private label. You can then pull in other people's wines with you to give you a bigger expanse. But so I share that because if you're thinking about like this, we thought about a couple things. One, when we plant vineyard, how can it add to the existing dreams and businesses that we had? So we're like, we do retreats. So we were like, oh, this will add to Vista, allowing us to have a higher end like retreat business. So we're like, okay, it added to it. Then we were like, what can it produce? If it can produce something, we're like, it can produce a wine business. So we're like another revenue stream, another business that's already feeding the one that's feeding the other type thing. Dan Kennedy taught this to us a long time ago. He's like, in a world of all uncertainty and things like that, the one thing that nobody can take from you is your ability to produce. So what is your skill set that you can produce? If it's, I produce masterminds for young children, you're like, I figured out how to produce that. That's the thing that you go for. What are you now, and reimagining where you're all at, will give you the next level. Adding to the layer you have, produce something new while also allowing you to fulfill. Like this fulfills a dream that my father had to one day have a vineyard, and he passed from Alzheimer's, and he never got to see something like this, so he was never around for this. Fulfilled a freaking dream.
Yeah.
And now it's allowing us to just have that next layer of business with our Crush Club that is going to be opening up in the fall. So think about that for yourselves. If I can add to existing business, if I can produce something new, and if I can fulfill a purpose with what I'm doing. And purpose sometimes, like, the wine business has become purpose to me, but it's not like purpose as in I'm gonna go leave legacy in the world with our legacy brand creators. It's a different purpose where I'm like, I hate crap wine. So if I can bring good wine to people, and back to what we said in there, I'm like, if I could bring good people in a good location with good wine, good food, and good conversation, we'll change the world one freaking dinner at a time. That's purpose. And in the thing where I'm like, I'm not racing anymore, nor is Anna, with baby number 2 on the way. And we made just this decision this year, where we're like, as we're rebuilding Legacy Brand Creator, we're like, we're changing the model.
Yeah.
because the model was stack the groups, grow it as big as you can, do that thing. And we're like, oh, we'll talk about it inside. We're like, no, we're going to shift to the 4%. And our model will be around the 4% now, while having the other things that we have going on, so everything doesn't have to come from one that's burning me out. Does that make sense? Like your dreams, you better be willing to manicure them things, because they cause tripping. Like what we've learned out here is like what has to happen this year is this thing called crop thinning. And they're gonna actually go around and they're gonna start looking at anybody that ain't making it, and they're gonna start cutting them and dropping them to the ground, because they're like, sometimes you gotta cut the good to feed the great. So the great ones will get more energy and produce better, especially in a year that we're getting stressed.
Yeah.
So they're like, yo, we gotta go around and we're gonna lose some, but the few that you do produce will be the best of what you got out of that year. And sometimes that's, again, back to like, and think about that in our businesses and our brands. Sometimes you gotta cut the revenue stream that looks good, or the decision that's looking good, but it ain't great. And you sometimes got to be willing to kind of ruthlessly go around
to prune
and do that to produce the greatness that you know can be, if you're willing to do that. Some people just don't do that, and then they hang out in mediocrity.
Right.
Trying to do it all.
Never produce the same. Never produce the same.
There's a difference between immediate gratification and that long-term investment in what truly matters to the vision, the big picture. So when we moved in here, obviously one of the criteria was, it doesn't have a pool? No way. It's 100+ degrees here in the summertime, and you're feeling it today, right? So we thought, oh, it doesn't have a pool, what are we gonna do? I don't know, but we realized that no, we can build a pool eventually, right? So that immediate gratification, we're like, we don't really have to have it right away. And we thought, well, what goes first, the pool or the vineyard? Right? Because you're like, the vineyard is going to take 3 years to actually produce a crop.
5 years to be at its best.
Yeah. And that obviously needed to happen first to get that ball rolling. And that delayed the pool another few years. And that was just something that Vito and I sat back on, both being high performers, both being into personal development, realizing that it's okay. It's not going to happen right away. Everything isn't going to spontaneously be perfect or be the way we want it to, but we saw the vision and we were willing to kind of plant the seed and take shape with the pace that things needed to be planted. And I just think that's a great reminder for us as entrepreneurs to remind ourselves and to remind our clients who are working with us, or that want that immediate gratification. It's so hard for people to learn that lesson and actually practice it in their lives, because it's easier said than done.
Yeah, and there's something to it when you're intentionally making that choice.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I'm cognizantly aware I need to do this. Otherwise, like that, I can go for delayed satisfaction versus the immediate gratification. And lining up the possibilities and the opportunities, because besides shiny object syndrome and things like that, when you have such gifted people, you literally have opportunity coming at you all the time. And what filter do you put on that is critical. Because you're like, otherwise you could just end up down bad paths, ruin marriages, mess up kids, do all the different things. And it was another thing, like for us being like, yo, we got Luca at 3, we got new baby on the way. It's not about run, it's about like jog and chill a little, because we've done the work to already be here. What a lot of people don't do is plan that far in advance. And then they're like, it never gets there, or they end up burning the thing out. So you got to be thinking for yourselves as what's the filter for what you want right now? Are there moves you need to make that you're like, I got to plant that first, even though I see nothing. It sticks.
There's no
right
reward
now.
for a while.
There is zero reward besides future day. I can't wait for that day. And then you're like, I ain't seen it for a while and I got to bust ass for it. Because when we've been successful and then we want to do the new thing, we sometimes expect the new thing to be at the same success of the other thing that we were just at. And I'm like, I've been taking nothing but a loss for years. We're actually hanging out with this 87-year-old woman, and her sister is about 85.
Yeah. They had so much value and lessons that they were sharing with us along the way, which is one of them that they were teaching us about the vines and how the vines need to be stressed.
So it's illegal to water there. And I was like, what do you mean it's illegal? And she's like, yeah, we can't water here. She's like, we have an intentional and that's the key word, reason why we stress the vines.
Yeah.
Because she's like, if we water them regularly, they get lazy, is how she puts it. And she's like, the roots will only grow along the top.
They'll spread along the top versus grow deep.
And then they're susceptible to more infestation, mills, whatever the things are that can go out there and do that. Instead, they're like, if we stress them, the roots grow deep, they're stronger, they're more fun. And we just remember that as what a lesson for
life.
Vineyards, but what a lesson for life, where most people want to avoid stress, not deal with it. We have to intentionally put ourselves in it.
Yeah.
For what aim? When you have no aim is where stress becomes like out of control and not healthy for us. But if we're stressing ourselves to go to the next level and we're cognizant about why we're doing it, then it's a growth measure.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, consider hitting the like button below.
And if you want to know how to go and build an online coaching brand that can do $500,000 plus with under 100 people so you don't have to live on social media, we created a free training that you can access just by hitting the link in the description below.